The autumn mist clung to Changdeokgung Palace, like whispered secrets, wrapping the ancient stone walls in a veil of melancholy. Within these hallowed corridors walked Prince Lee Jihan, 23 years of age, his footsteps echoing with the weight of unspoken burdens. His face, a masterpiece carved by the gods themselves, bore the weathered beauty of one who had known both triumph and devastating loss. Strong, masculine features defined his jawline, while his dark eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire universes of pain and longing. Long black hair cascaded past his shoulders, meticulously groomed yet bearing that subtle dishevelment that spoke of restless nights and heavy thoughts. Most striking was the elegant silk mask that covered the lower half of his face, leaving only his expressive eyes visible to the world. The mask, crafted from the finest midnight blue silk and embroidered with silver threads depicting soaring cranes, had become his shield against a court that whispered of curses and divine punishment. 3 years prior, during a border skirmish defending his kingdom, an enemy blade had left its mark not just on his face, but on his spirit. The scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw had healed, but the court's reaction had not. They saw weakness where there should have been strength, a flawed prince unfit for the throne. Jihan's personality remained unchanged beneath the mask, brave when duty called, protective of those he loved, yet vulnerable in ways that made him more human than royal. His greatest conflict lay in the constant battle between his sense of duty to the crown and his desire to live authentically, to be seen for who he truly was, rather than what others expected him to be. Far from the palace's golden halls, in a modest village nestled between rolling hills dotted with persimmon trees, lived Soo-jin. At 18, she possessed a delicate beauty that seemed to glow from within. Luminous skin that caught moonlight like captured starshine, and expressive eyes that reflected the depth of her compassionate soul. Her humble origins in her grandmother's herb garden had taught her that true value lay not in titles or riches, but in the healing power of kindness and the strength found in authenticity. Soo-jin's hands, though small and graceful, bore the honest calluses of one who worked the earth. She knew every medicinal plant by touch, could identify healing herbs by their scent alone, and possessed an intuitive understanding of how to blend remedies that went beyond mere book learning. Her personality was refreshingly genuine, unimpressed by social hierarchies, internally strong despite her gentle demeanor, and possessed of a quiet courage that would soon be tested in ways she never imagined. The thread that would bind their fates had been woven years earlier, though neither remembered it clearly. When Soo-jin was merely 10 years old, she had wandered too far from her village while gathering wild ginseng. Lost and frightened as darkness fell, she had been found by a young prince on horseback, a prince whose face bore no mask, whose smile had been warm and reassuring as he guided her safely home. That prince had been Jihan, before war had changed him, before the court had turned its back on him. The palace's east garden lay shrouded in the soft light of paper lanterns strung between ancient pine trees, their warm glow creating pools of amber illumination against the encroaching darkness. It was here that Soo-jin had managed to gain entry through a sympathetic kitchen servant who remembered her grandmother's kindness to his own family. Prince Jihan walked these same paths nightly, seeking solitude away from the pitying glances and whispered conversations that followed him through the main halls. His silk robes, deep purple embroidered with golden phoenixes, rustled softly as he moved with careful, measured steps. The cane in his left hand, carved from rare sandalwood and topped with jade, was both necessity and symbol of how far he had fallen from the warrior he once was. Their collision was as inevitable as it was unexpected. Soo-jin, carrying a carefully wrapped bundle of medicinal herbs, had been studying the layout of the garden when she turned a corner and walked directly into the prince's path. The impact sent her bundle flying, precious herbs scattering across the stone pathway like fallen stars. "Forgive me," she gasped, immediately dropping to her knees to gather the scattered medicines, her heart hammering with the terror of discovery. Jihan, steadying himself against a nearby pillar, found himself studying the young woman before him. Even in the dim lantern light, He could see the genuine distress in her movements, the careful way she handled each herb as if it were precious beyond measure. There was something familiar about her profile, though he couldn't place where he might have seen her before. "The fault is mine," he said softly, his voice carrying the refined tones of royal education, but tinged with a weariness that spoke of deeper wounds than any sword could inflict. "I walk these paths carelessly, lost in thought." Soo-jin's hands stilled as she recognized the voice. Slowly, she raised her eyes to meet his, and in that moment, time seemed to suspend itself between heartbeats. His eyes, those dark, expressive windows to his soul, were exactly as she remembered from her childhood, though now they carried shadows that hadn't been there before. "Your Highness," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle rustling of leaves in the evening breeze. Something in her tone, in the way she looked at him without fear or pity, made Jihan's breath catch. "You know me?" "You saved me once," she said simply, still kneeling among the scattered herbs. "When I was lost in the forest as a child, you brought me home safely." The memory surfaced slowly, like a dream half remembered upon waking. A small girl with tear-streaked cheeks, her tiny hand trustingly placed in his as he led his horse through the darkening woods. He had been so young then, so certain of his place in the world, so unmarked by the cruelties that awaited him. "Soo-jin," he breathed, the name coming to him as if whispered by the wind itself. She nodded, tears gathering in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of a joy so profound it threatened to overflow. "You remember." "I remember a brave little girl who wasn't afraid of the dark," he said, moving carefully to kneel beside her, his royal protocol forgotten in the face of this unexpected reunion. "But I see a woman now who still carries that same courage." As they gathered the scattered herbs together, their hands occasionally brushing in the lamplight, Soo-jin explained her purpose. "These medicines, I brought them for you. The palace physicians, they follow old methods, but sometimes the body needs different healing. My grandmother taught me. You spent your savings on medicines for me?" The wonder in his voice was unmistakable. "But why?" "Because you saved me once," she said, meeting his gaze with unwavering honesty. "And because the stories they tell about you in the village, they're wrong. You're not cursed or broken. You're just hurting, and hurt can be healed if someone cares enough to try." In that moment, surrounded by scattered herbs and bathed in the gentle glow of paper lanterns, something fundamental shifted between them. The prince saw not a subject offering tribute, but a woman offering hope. And Soo-jin saw not a fallen royal, but the same kind soul who had once guided a lost child home. The weeks that followed brought a transformation that began in the shadows and slowly crept into the light. Soo-jin's medicines, prepared with ancient wisdom and administered with modern care, began to work their subtle magic. The chronic pain that had plagued Jihan since his injury lessened, his sleep became more restful, and gradually, the vibrant energy that had once defined him began to return. Their meetings became a cherished ritual, always in the secret spaces of the palace where curious eyes couldn't follow. Sometimes they met in the moonlight pavilion, a delicate structure of carved wood and silk screens that seemed to float above a lotus pond. Other times they would find each other in the palace's ancient library, surrounded by scrolls of poetry and philosophy, sharing thoughts that ranged from the profound to the playfully mundane. It was during one such evening in the library, with rain pattering gently against the windows and the air heavy with the scent of old parchment and sandalwood incense, that Jihan made a decision that would change everything. The room was lit only by a few strategically placed candles, their warm light creating an intimate cocoon around them as they sat across from each other at a low table, discussing a particularly beautiful passage from an ancient love poem. "Soo-jin," he said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that made her look up from the scroll she had been reading. "There's something I want to share with you, but I need you to promise me something first." Anything, she replied without hesitation, though her heart began to race at the serious tone in his voice. Promise me that what you see won't change how you look at me. Promise me that you'll still see the man, not the flaw. Understanding flooded through her, and she reached across the table to place her small hand over his larger one. I see you, Jihan. Not your mask, not your title, not your scars. Just you. Nothing will change that. With trembling fingers, he reached up and slowly untied the silk cords that held his mask in place. The fabric fell away like a curtain being drawn back, revealing the face that had been hidden from the world for 3 years. The scar was there, certainly, a pale line that traced from his temple to his jaw, but it did nothing to diminish his beauty. If anything, it added character to features that might otherwise have been too perfect, too untouchable. Soo-jin's breath caught, not from shock or pity, but from the overwhelming privilege of being trusted with this vulnerability. You're beautiful, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Every part of you is beautiful. Tears gathered in Jihan's eyes. The first tears he had allowed himself to shed since the day the court first recoiled from his appearance. The court sees only the flaw. They whisper that I'm marked by heaven's displeasure, that I'm unfit to rule. Then the court is blind, she said fiercely, rising from her seat to move around the table and kneel beside him. With infinite tenderness, she traced the line of his scar with her fingertip, her touch so gentle it was barely there. This mark doesn't make you less than what you were. It makes you more. It shows that you fought for something greater than yourself, that you were willing to sacrifice for your people. How is that anything but beautiful? In that moment, surrounded by ancient wisdom and bathed in candlelight, Jihan understood that he was falling in love. Not with the idea of love, not with the comfort of companionship, but with this extraordinary woman who saw strength where others saw weakness, beauty where others saw flaw. And Soo-jin, looking into his unveiled face and seeing the man she had always known he was, felt her heart opening like a flower to the sun. Their first kiss was as gentle as morning dew, as profound as the turning of seasons. It spoke of promises yet to be made, of futures yet to be written, of a love that could transform not just two hearts, but an entire kingdom's understanding of what it meant to be worthy. The Autumn Moon Festival arrived with all the pageantry and political maneuvering that such events entailed. The palace's grand hall had been transformed into a wonderland of silk banners in deep reds and golds, with hundreds of lanterns casting dancing shadows across walls adorned with paintings of cranes and dragons. The air was thick with the scent of chrysanthemums, and the sound of traditional music played on gayagiyam and degum, creating an atmosphere that was both festive and formal. Prince Jihan, resplendent in robes of midnight blue silk embroidered with silver constellations, moved through the crowd with a grace that had been absent for years. His mask, tonight crafted from silver silk and decorated with tiny pearls that caught the light like captured stars, couldn't hide the new vitality in his bearing. Nobles who had dismissed him as a broken relic found themselves reassessing their positions as they watched him engage in conversations with a sharpness of wit they had forgotten he possessed. But Jihan's attention was not on the political machinations swirling around him. His eyes constantly searched the crowd for a glimpse of Soo-jin, who had been granted permission to attend as part of a group of village healers invited to demonstrate traditional medicine techniques. When he finally spotted her, his breath caught in his throat. She wore a hanbok of soft lavender silk, the color bringing out the luminous quality of her skin and making her dark eyes seem to hold depths of starlight. Her hair was arranged in an elegant style befitting the occasion, adorned with a simple silver pin that had been her grandmother's. She moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, unimpressed by the grandeur around her, focused instead on the genuine connection she made with each person she encountered. Their eyes met across the crowded hall, and the rest of the world seemed to fade into insignificance. In that moment of connection, they shared a smile that spoke of secret knowledge, of a love that existed beyond the reach of court politics and social expectations. It was then that the Queen Mother chose to make her announcement. "My dear subjects, Her voice rang out across the hall, commanding immediate attention. Tonight, as we celebrate the harmony of heaven and earth, I am pleased to announce that negotiations have been completed for the betrothal of my son, Prince Jihan, to Lady Min Soo-jin, daughter of the Minister of War. The words hit Jihan like a physical blow. Across the room, he saw Soo-jin's face go pale, her hand reaching out to steady herself against a nearby pillar. The crowd around them erupted in polite applause and murmurs of approval, but all Jihan could hear was the sound of his own heart breaking. Lady Min Soo-jin, a woman of undeniable beauty and impeccable breeding, stepped forward with a smile that was perfectly calculated for public consumption. She was everything the court expected in a future princess: noble birth, political connections, and the kind of polished perfection that would photograph well in official portraits. But as Jihan looked at her, all he could think about was the genuine warmth in Soo-jin's eyes, the way her laughter sounded like music, the tender way she had touched his scar and called it beautiful. This arranged marriage represented everything he had come to despise about his life: duty without love, obligation without choice, a future mapped out by others with no regard for his own heart. When he finally managed to escape the crowd, he found Soo-jin waiting for him in their secret garden, tears streaming down her face in the moonlight. She had changed from her festival clothes into her simple, everyday hanbok, as if trying to remind herself of who she really was, where she truly belonged. "I should go," she whispered as he approached, her voice breaking with the effort of holding back sobs. "I should never have let myself believe that this could be real." "Don't," he said urgently, reaching for her hands and holding them tightly in his own. "Don't let them take this away from us. Don't let them make you believe that what we have isn't real, isn't worth fighting for." "You're going to be married," she said, the words coming out like a physical pain, "to someone who deserves you, someone who can give you the kind of life you were born to live." "I don't want the life I was born to live," he said fiercely, his mask forgotten as raw emotion poured out of him. "I want the life I choose to live. I want a life with you." "And what about your duty? Your kingdom? Your people?" "What good am I to my people if I'm living a lie?" he demanded. "How can I rule with wisdom and compassion if I've never had the courage to follow my own heart? You taught me that healing comes from authenticity, from being true to who we really are. How can I turn away from that lesson now?" They stood there in the garden, surrounded by the soft glow of lanterns and the gentle sound of water flowing over stones. Two people caught between love and duty, between heart and obligation. The choice before them would define not just their own futures, but the very nature of what it meant to live with integrity in a world that often demanded compromise. The confrontation came at dawn, in the Hall of Heavenly Peace, where the morning light streamed through windows of colored glass, painting the floor in jeweled patterns of red and gold. Jihan had requested this private audience with his mother, knowing that what he was about to say would shake the very foundations of everything she had planned for his future. The Queen Mother sat on her throne, a woman of formidable intelligence and unwavering will, her silk robes the color of deep wine, and her hair adorned with golden ornaments that caught the early light. She had ruled as regent during her son's recovery, and the prospect of his marriage to Lady Min represented not just a personal alliance, but a crucial political strategy for maintaining stability in the kingdom. "Mother," Jihan began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal, "I cannot marry Lady Min." "Cannot?" The Queen Mother's voice was dangerously quiet. "Or will not?" "Both," he replied, standing straighter than he had in years, his decision lending him a strength that surprised them both. "I will not enter into a marriage without love, and I cannot betray the woman who holds my heart." "And who might that be?" Though she asked the question, her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. "The herb seller's daughter, Soo-jin. She is the one I choose." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the distant sound of birds singing in the palace gardens. When the Queen Mother finally spoke, her words were measured and cold, You would throw away your birthright, your duty to this kingdom for a peasant girl. I would fulfill my duty to this kingdom by becoming the kind of ruler who leads with his heart, as well as his mind, Jihan replied. Soo-jin has shown me that true strength comes from vulnerability, that real power lies in authenticity. These are not weaknesses, mother. They are the qualities that will make me a better king. The court will never accept her. Then the court will learn to change, or I will find another way to serve my people. The Queen Mother rose from her throne, her movements sharp with anger and frustration. You speak of serving your people, but what you propose is pure selfishness. Marriage is not about love, Jihan. It is about alliance, about stability, about ensuring the continuation of our dynasty. And what kind of dynasty would we be continuing? He challenged. One built on lies and loveless unions? One that teaches future generations that their hearts don't matter, that their choices are meaningless? Is that the legacy you want to leave? For a moment, something flickered in the Queen Mother's eyes. Perhaps a memory of her own youth, her own dreams that had been sacrificed on the altar of political necessity. But the moment passed, and her expression hardened once more. You have 3 days, she said finally. 3 days to come to your senses and accept your responsibility. If you do not, I will have no choice but to declare you unfit to rule and name your cousin as heir. The threat hung in the air between them like a sword suspended by a thread. Jihan felt the weight of it, understood the full implications of what his mother was offering him. Choose duty and keep his crown, or choose love and lose everything he had been born to inherit. I understand, he said quietly, and I hope that in 3 days you will understand as well. The third day dawned gray and misty, as if the heavens themselves were uncertain about what was to come. In the Hall of Eternal Harmony, the entire court had assembled for what everyone knew would be a moment that would define the future of the kingdom. Nobles in their finest silks whispered among themselves. Ministers clutched scrolls of advice and precedent, and servants pressed themselves against the walls, eager to witness history in the making. Prince Jihan entered the hall with a dignity that surprised even his harshest critics. Gone was the broken man who had hidden behind masks and shadows. In his place stood someone who had found his true strength, not in the power of his position, but in the courage of his convictions. He wore robes of pure white silk, the color of new beginnings, and for the first time in 3 years, his face was completely uncovered. The scar that had once been a source of shame now seemed like a badge of honor, proof of his willingness to sacrifice for others. His long black hair was pulled back in a simple style that emphasized the strong lines of his face, and his dark eyes held a clarity that spoke of a man who had finally found his path. Behind him, to the shock of the assembled court, walked Soo-jin. She wore a hanbok of soft blue silk, the color of dawn skies and new hope, her hair adorned with a simple silver ornament that caught the light like captured starshine. She moved with quiet grace, her head held high despite the weight of hundreds of staring eyes, her hand resting lightly on Jihan's arm in a gesture that spoke of partnership rather than subservience. My people, Jihan's voice rang out across the hall, clear and strong. I stand before you today, not just as your prince, but as a man who has learned the true meaning of leadership through the greatest teacher of all, love. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Jihan continued, his gaze sweeping across the assembled nobles and servants alike. 3 years ago, I was wounded in battle, and I allowed that wound to define me. I hid behind masks, both literal and figurative, believing that my scars made me unworthy of your trust. But this woman, he gestured to Soo-jin, showed me that our scars do not diminish us. They prove our capacity to survive, to grow, to become something greater than we were before. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. I have been asked to choose between duty and love, as if the two were incompatible. But I reject that choice. True duty, the kind that serves our people with wisdom and compassion, can only come from a heart that knows love. A ruler who has never had the courage to follow his own heart cannot hope to understand the hearts of his subjects. The Queen Mother rose from her throne, her voice cutting through the silence. And what of stability? What of the alliances that keep our kingdom safe? What of the traditions that have guided us for centuries? Traditions should guide us, not imprison us, Jihan replied. And the greatest tradition of all is the belief that every person, regardless of their birth, has value and worth. Soo-jin has proven her worth not through bloodlines or political connections, but through her actions, her wisdom, her capacity to heal and to love. If our kingdom cannot recognize that kind of value, then perhaps it is our kingdom that needs to change. He turned to face Soo-jin, taking her hands in his before the entire court, his voice dropping to a tone that was intimate, yet somehow reached every corner of the vast hall. "You saved me," he said simply. "Not just with your medicines, but with your courage to see me as I truly am. You taught me that vulnerability is not weakness, but strength. That authenticity is not a luxury, but a necessity. I choose you, not despite my duty to this kingdom, but because of it. I choose the future we can build together over the past that others would impose upon us." Soo-jin's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of overwhelming joy and pride in the man standing before her. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but carried clearly through the silent hall. "I am not noble born," she said, addressing the court directly for the first time. "I cannot offer political alliances or vast dowries, but I can offer something that no amount of gold can buy. A love that will make your prince not just a better ruler, but a better man. I promise to stand beside him not as someone who seeks to gain from his position, but as someone who will help him remember always that true power comes from service to others." The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the sound of the Queen Mother's footsteps as she descended from her throne. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, she stood before the couple, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she reached up and removed the golden phoenix pin from her hair, the symbol of royal authority that had been passed down through generations of queens. "This kingdom has always prided itself on recognizing true worth," she said, her voice carrying a weight of decision that would echo through history. "Perhaps it is time we proved that those words are more than empty tradition." She placed the pin in Soo-jin's hands, the gesture serving as both acceptance and blessing. "If my son has found in you the strength to become the leader this kingdom needs, then who am I to stand in the way of such transformation?" The hall erupted in a mixture of gasps, applause, and whispered conversations as the implications of the Queen Mother's action sank in. Lady Min, her face pale but dignified, stepped forward and offered a respectful bow to the couple before withdrawing with her father, their political ambitions gracefully set aside in the face of such a momentous decision. As the court gradually dispersed, buzzing with excitement and speculation about what this unprecedented union would mean for the kingdom, Jihan and Soo-jin found themselves alone in the vast hall, the weight of their new reality settling around them like a silk cloak. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice soft with wonder at how completely their lives had changed in the span of a single conversation. "I'm ready for anything," she replied, "as long as we face it together." Their wedding, held 1 month later in the palace's ancestral temple, was unlike any royal ceremony in the kingdom's history. Instead of a grand political spectacle, it was an intimate celebration of love's triumph over convention. The temple was decorated with simple white chrysanthemums and burning incense, the air filled with the soft music of traditional instruments played by court musicians who had volunteered their services out of genuine joy for the couple's happiness. As they performed the traditional vows that would bind them as husband and wife, the small gathering of family and close friends could feel the profound love that surrounded them. This was not a marriage of convenience or political necessity, but a union of two souls who had found in each other the courage to be truly themselves. Their first dance as husband and wife took place in the same secret garden where they had first truly seen each other. Paper lanterns strung between the trees cast a warm glow over the scene, while the gentle sound of water flowing over stones provided nature's own music for their celebration. As they moved together in the soft light, Jihan marveled at how perfectly Soo-jin fit in his arms, how right this felt despite all the obstacles they had overcome to reach this moment. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had never met again?" she asked softly as they swayed together under the stars. "No," he replied without hesitation, "because I believe we were always meant to find each other again. You were meant to save me, and I was meant to learn from you what it really means to live with courage and authenticity." As the night deepened around them, they continued to dance in their private garden, two people who had dared to choose love over expectation, authenticity over convenience. Their story would be told for generations, not as a fairy tale of perfect people living perfect lives, but as a testament to the transformative power of genuine love and the courage required to live according to one's deepest truths. In choosing each other, they had not just found personal happiness, but had shown their kingdom a new way of understanding strength, leadership, and the true meaning of honor. Their love had become a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt trapped between duty and desire, proving that sometimes the greatest service we can offer the world is the courage to be authentically, vulnerably, completely ourselves.